Hey guys, this is John Sherwood here at johnsherwood.com. I've got Twaambo on the line, who is a single minister of a church in Zambia. Twaambo, it's so great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, John, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's really cool to be able to do this and connect, even though there's a large ocean that separates us. Thank you for being able to jump on here with me. I know actually you've kind of exited from a ministry event to do this for me, so thank you so much. I don't want to keep you too long, but I did want to ask some questions, while I have you here on the line. Just you're a single man in Zambia, and you're leading a church of about 150 people that's spread out across a couple of locations. Tell me a little bit about how did you kind of come into that position and that role of leading that particular church there?
So yeah, what happened is I had gone down to South Africa for my university studies, and while I was there, that's when I kind of met the International Churches of Christ, and that's where I got involved with the International Churches of Christ. But funny enough, after I'd finished my mechatronics studies, I was working as a mechatronic technician, and there was a need in the church in Pretoria. So then I was offered the opportunity of being able to do what we call in the church a one-year challenge.
Okay.
So where someone a year of their life, and they kind of commit themselves to fully being on campus or working with the singles, teaching them the Bible and what the Bible has to say about their relationship with God. So after I did that for 2 years in Joburg, I happened to come back to Zambia for a short break, trying to decide what I would do next. And then what happened is that there was a need in the church here in Zambia, because the couple that was leading the church in Zambia were moving to Atlanta, and they didn't have anyone to take over. So then they thought, oh, here's a guy who's got some ministry experience. Let's pitch it. And we started praying about it, and we had a lot of back and forth conversations, a lot of fasting. I was very nervous to do this, but here I am now doing it.
Fantastic. That's so great, man. It's so encouraging, to see you just step out on faith, and God brings circumstances to you, and you be willing to pray and just follow where he's leading. It's interesting that you mentioned the one-year challenge. I actually also did a one-year challenge back in 2005, and that was really one of the things that catalyzed me doing full-time ministry here for the last 10 years or so. And, it's funny because the way I was introduced to the concept of one-year challenge is that, the Mormon faith is well known for sending out young people for 2 years on what they call their mission, and they'll send them somewhere that they're not from to exclusively just spread their faith and their religious doctrines. And so, I was always taught that, hey, like if the Mormons are willing to step out there for their faith when they're young like that, why can't we take a year of our life when we're in a position to do that as young people and really go serve the Lord? And so that's a thing that's near and dear to my heart. I know it is to you as well. Just thank you for being willing to step out there. So what have you seen are some of the unique joys and opportunities and also challenges of being a single person leading a church?
Well, maybe let me start with the unique joys and opportunities. I think one thing of being a single person leading a church is that, like the Bible says that, there's something about serving God when you're still young and full of energy and strength. And that's what I love about it. And man, I can just go out there and give it my all, while I still have the energy and the strength and without not saying family is a distraction, but without the distraction of or worrying about this, but I really can just go out there and give it my all. But also the other thing I've noticed is that it also kind of is, because it's something which is very unique, well, especially in this part of the world, you kind of stand out as a role model of a young person, who's standing up for something that's right and doing something that people recognize is, a thing to do. So then you kind of stand out from the community when people hear you're a young single minister, and then so to a certain degree that kind of then you become kind of an example to the community, because people can look at a young person who's not just out there trying to either chase their dreams or doing things they shouldn't be doing, but actually someone who's lead people. But also some of the joys is because I'm kind of in a stage where, part of the church is my generation. So I can connect with them very easily. A lot of the young people in our church, while on campus, who are in the teen ministry, who are in the singles, I'm not too far from their generation. I understand the pressures and kind of the makeup of this generation. So then it becomes very, interesting for me to be able to lead the church, because I know exactly what's exciting for them, what exactly they're thinking, what they're going
Right.
through. And, I can relate to that, and they can relate to me, because I'm
Right.
such a young guy and I'm still in their generation. They don't look at me as someone older and
Right.
outside the thinking generation. So,
Right.
yeah, those are some of the joys.
Now, real
Some of
quick,
the
before you continue on, let me ask you a question about that. You mentioned that because of your age and probably being single, you're able to relate to and connect to some of the younger generation. Do you find that creates any sort of roadblocks or hurdles for you to be able to connect with some of the older in your church?
um, Not well, in a sense it does, because also I guess culturally, you got to understand that also in Zambia, culturally, the way the relationship is between a younger person and an older person is that you respect the older person. You kind of
Sure.
don't just step into the space and kind of relate. So
Right.
I think that the obstacle would be from a cultural point of view. Otherwise, I'm very comfortable just relating with people that are
Right.
older than me. But
Right.
if that cultural, roadblock, then that's what I would usually
Right.
find. Yeah.
Right. No, that totally makes sense. So what other challenges do you feel like you face in your context being a single man leading a church?
Yeah. So, well, one of the most major challenges that I'm facing right now, and I face, is obviously I'm a single guy leading a church, and I don't have sort of like a woman's leader next to me.
Sure.
So obviously, I can only meet certain needs in the church. Obviously, we're praying, and someone is going to come into that role. So then there's certain things I can do with the women, or meet their needs, because I'm just a single guy alone leading
Sure.
the church. So that's one of the biggest glaring challenges.
Yeah.
The other thing is also sometimes being a single young minister, you sometimes feel like, man, I don't have the experience to do this. And
Hmm.
sometimes you can tell yourself that, man,
Sure.
I wish I was like the older minister who has 25 years behind his mileage, and
Right.
he knows what he's doing. So sometimes I can doubt myself being
Sure.
young. Also, I guess also being young, you want to do things perfectly. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to be the one that messes things up. So sometimes I guess it's self-imposed pressure,
Hmm.
being a young person and being a go-getter, and maybe
Right.
it's because I'm an engineer by trade, so I want to get things right.
Right.
But also I think another challenge being a young single minister is I can ignore my boundaries, because I think I've got all the strength and the energy, and hence I can run myself into the ground, because I'm just saying, yes, I can do everything because I feel the energy, whereas if you're
Right.
older, you know your limits more, and you know
Right.
what you can do.
Right.
Whereas I'm young, I think I can do everything. You think you're Superman. So then
Right.
you find yourself into the ground. So those are some of the challenges I guess I'm
Right.
facing.
No, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. And you mentioned that as you age, hopefully you get more aware of yourself and your boundaries. But that's just hopefully, right? So
Yeah.
obviously that could not necessarily be the case. But what would you say? What kind of advice would you give to someone who maybe is younger and single, and they're contemplating, is God really calling me into leadership and potentially being full-time in a ministry role? What kind of advice and encouragement would you give that person?
Yeah. Well, I would encourage that, because I think it's the best job ever. I always tell people that, my boss is God. I mean, who gets to say that? That's fantastic. But, like you and I said, I think the 1 Year Challenge is a great platform to begin with if someone is thinking of that. Or if you have some sort of system like that where you can take a year off and just really commit, be able to serve. Then you're able to test the waters and see, man, is this something that you can really do? For me, it did do that. I mean, I did one, and then I did a second one because I was
Right.
enjoying it so much,
Right. Right.
I really think that's a starting point, that, if you have the opportunity in your church to be able to give a year of your time and just serve, that's a great point. But also I think it's a lot of asking, like the Bible says, many advisors make victory sure.
Mm.
Ask people around you who
Yeah.
see you in your church. What do they see in you? What do they
Yeah.
think of you, when you think about, taking on full-time ministry?
Sure.
So asking people who are close to you and getting advice. And again, if you feel like it's something on your heart, I believe before everything, prayer is important. You really
Mm.
gotta pray that God will make it clear, and God does make it clear,
Yeah.
that you won't miss it, So he'll make it so clear that you might be tempted to be like Gideon and give him so many tests because it's so clear,
Right.
But we can go to some of the tips I'd give.
Yeah. Not quite that clear, God. Maybe we could try this again. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very wise counsel there, Twaambo. I wanted to just kind of close out here. Would you have any resources maybe that you would recommend, books or websites or anything that you found helpful for your own walk as a single church leader?
Whew. Well, one thing I do is I read a lot. So, your local Christian bookstore, I don't know what whoever's listening to this, what your local Christian bookstore is. Go in there and, just look at, for me, I love the resource kind of section in the local bookstore because I want to see what other people have to say, what other ministers, what they write and books, that kind of thing. So I love that. I've been getting to know your website, which is, has a lot of information on it. I'd recommend people to that. I'd recommend people to Bible.org, which also has quite a lot of information. I know personally there's certain people I also listen to. One person is from the International Churches of Christ, Douglas Jacoby. He's got a lot of information on his website, douglasjacoby.com. Evidenceforchristianity.com by a gentleman called John Ox. I love that website also because I'm apologetics orientated, so I love a lot of material in that section. But I mean, we live in the age where there's the internet and there's so much information out there. Also asking people around you, people in the ministry, what their resources are. I found that helpful.
That's great. Listen, Twaambo, thank you so much again for joining me on here. This is Twaambo all the way from Zambia, John Sherwood from johnsherwood.com. We'll see you later, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.